The text message that destroyed my marriage arrived at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, lighting up my phone like a neon sign in hell. Relax, darling. I'll be back in a week. Paris is calling. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My name is Ben Carter, and I'm about to tell you how my wife Julia turned our suburban Dallas paradise into ground zero for the most spectacular revenge story you've ever heard. But first, let me paint you a picture of the life I thought I had. We lived in Preston Hollow, one of those neighborhoods where the grass is always greener because everyone hires the same landscaping company. Julia was an interior designer with a talent for making spaces look like magazine covers and making people feel like they needed her approval to breathe. I was an IT consultant, the guy who fixed everyone's computers and got invited to parties because I was useful, not because I was interesting. For 3 years, we played house in our perfect little world. Julia hosted dinner parties where she served wine that cost more than my car payment and talked about curating experiences. I made jokes that nobody laughed at and wondered when I'd started feeling like a guest in my own life. The cracks started showing 6 months ago. Julia became distant, spending hours on her phone with what she called international clients. She'd disappear for long lunches and come back smelling like expensive cologne that wasn't mine. When I asked questions, she'd give me that look, the one that said I was being paranoid and small-minded. You wouldn't understand, Ben. This is about expanding my brand globally. Her brand. Not our life, not our future. Her brand. The night before she left for Paris, we had what I now realize was our last real conversation. We were sitting in our kitchen, all granite countertops and stainless steel appliances, eating takeout Chinese because Julia was too busy preparing for her trip to cook. So this Marcus guy, I said, trying to sound casual. Tell me about him again. Julia's chopsticks paused halfway to her mouth. He's a potential business partner. I've told you this. Right, and you dated him in college. That was 10 years ago, Ben. People change. This is business. Business trips usually don't require 3 new dresses and a complete Brazilian wax. She slammed her chopsticks down. Are you seriously going to be that husband? The jealous, insecure type who can't handle his wife having a career? That stung because she knew exactly how to hit where it hurt. I'd always been proud of Julia's success, even when it made me feel inadequate. But something about this trip felt different. Something about the way she lit up when she talked about Paris, about Marcus, about everything that didn't include me. I'm not being jealous, I said. I'm being realistic. You're flying to Paris to spend a week with your ex-boyfriend, and you're acting like I'm crazy for having questions. His name is Marcus Beaumont, and he's a successful entrepreneur who could change everything for me. For us. For us? When's the last time you said us about anything that wasn't paying bills? She stood up, her chair scraping against our expensive hardwood floors. I can't do this right now. I have an early flight. That was it. No kiss goodnight, no reassurance, no acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, I had a right to be concerned about my wife jetting off to the city of love with her ex-boyfriend. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling and listening to Julia pack. She was humming, actually humming while she folded lingerie I'd never seen before into her suitcase. The next morning, she was gone before I woke up. No goodbye, no note, just that text message that arrived 14 hours later from somewhere over the Atlantic. Relax, darling. I'll be back in a week. Paris is calling. Darling. She'd never called me darling in her life. I sat in our empty house, surrounded by Julia's carefully curated perfection, and felt something shift inside me. Maybe it was anger, maybe it was clarity, maybe it was just the simple recognition that I'd been playing defense in my own life for too long. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Lisa Tran. Lisa lived 3 houses down, worked as a software engineer, and had the kind of sharp wit that could cut glass. We'd been friendly neighbors for 2 years, the kind of people who borrowed sugar and complained about the HOA together. Ben, everything okay? It's pretty early. Julia left for Paris this morning. Oh, business trip? Something like that? Want to grab coffee? I could use some company? There was a pause. Ikko, give me 20 minutes. Lisa showed up in jeans and a Texas Rangers t-shirt, her black hair pulled back in a ponytail, looking more real than Julia had in months. We went to the little cafe on Mockingbird Lane, the one Julia always said was too pedestrian for her taste. So, Lisa said, stirring sugar into her coffee, you want to talk about it? I found myself telling her everything. The distance, the secrets, the way Julia had been treating me like an inconvenience in her grand plans. Lisa listened without judgment, occasionally nodding or making small sounds of understanding. "Can I ask you something?" Lisa said when I finished. "What do you want to happen here?" It was a simple question that cut right to the heart of everything. What did I want? I want to stop feeling like I'm apologizing for existing in my own life. Lisa smiled, and it was the first genuine smile I'd seen in months. Then maybe it's time to stop apologizing. That afternoon, I called Rick Vasquez, a divorce attorney I'd met at a neighborhood barbecue. Rick was the kind of lawyer who wore cowboy boots with his suits and had a reputation for being tougher than a $2 steak. "Ben Carter," Rick said when he answered. "What can I do for you?" "My wife left for Paris with her ex-boyfriend this morning. I want to file for divorce. Abandonment and adultery. How long has she been gone?" "About 12 hours. Rick laughed. "I like your style. Come in tomorrow morning. Bring everything. Bank statements, phone records, whatever you've got. We're going to make this interesting." That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I ordered pizza, opened a beer, and sat in my living room without worrying about coasters or crumbs or whether Julia would approve. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. My phone buzzed with a text from Julia, a selfie of her and Marcus at some fancy Parisian restaurant, both of them looking ridiculously happy. The message read, "Missing you already. Paris is magical." I stared at the photo for a long moment, then did something that would have been unthinkable 24 hours earlier. I walked over to Lisa's house and knocked on her door. "Feel like taking a selfie?" I asked when she answered. "What kind of selfie?" "The kind that says I'm not sitting at home waiting for my wife to remember I exist." Lisa grinned. "I'll get my good lipstick." 10 minutes later, we were at the neighborhood's fancy steakhouse, the one Julia always insisted was our place. Lisa looked stunning in a black dress she'd thrown on, and I'd actually combed my hair and put on a decent shirt. The selfie we took was perfect. Lisa and I laughing over cocktails, looking like we were having the time of our lives, which honestly, we were. I sent it to Julia with a simple message. "Missing you too. Dallas is pretty magical itself." Her response came back in less than 5 minutes. "What the hell is this?" I turned off my phone and ordered another drink. For the first time in years, I was exactly where I wanted to be, doing exactly what I wanted to do, with someone who actually seemed to enjoy my company. The war was about to begin, and I was finally ready to fight. Julia's phone calls started the next morning at 6 a.m. I let them go to voicemail while I sat in Rick's office, signing paperwork that would change everything. "Emergency divorce filing," Rick explained, sliding another document across his desk. "Based on abandonment and adultery. The photo evidence you've got is solid, and the timing works in our favor. She left the country with her lover, Ben. That's not a business trip, that's a declaration of war." I signed my name with more satisfaction than I'd felt in years. "How long before she served?" "International service takes a few days, but I've got contacts in Paris. She'll know by Friday that her little vacation just became very expensive." My phone buzzed with another call from Julia. I declined it and looked at Rick. "What about our assets?" "Joint accounts, I assume? You're entitled to protect marital property. I'd suggest moving half into a separate account today. The house is in both names?" "Yeah, but I've been making the mortgage payments for 2 years. Julia's business income is sporadic." Rick made a note. "Good. We'll use that." "What about her friends? Anyone who might testify about her relationship with this Marcus guy?" I thought about Julia's inner circle. Tasha Williams, her best friend and biggest enabler. Priya Patel, who collected gossip like some people collected stamps. And Abby Morrison, who'd always been polite but never seemed to actually like Julia very much. A few possibilities, but they're loyal to her. Loyalty has a way of shifting when people realize they've been lied to. Trust me on this. I left Rick's office feeling like I'd just stepped out of a fog. For the first time in months, I had a plan that didn't involve hoping Julia would remember she had a husband. My phone had 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. I scrolled through them while sitting in my car outside the bank. "Ben, call me back immediately." "What is that photo supposed to mean? Are you having some kind of breakdown?" "Marcus thinks you're being childish." That last one made me laugh out loud. Marcus had an opinion about my behavior? The guy who was currently sleeping with my wife in Paris had thoughts about my maturity level. I walked into the bank and moved exactly half of our joint savings into a new account, $53,000. Money that Julia had assumed would be there when she got back from her romantic getaway. Then I drove home and did something that felt even better than signing divorce papers. I changed the locks. Lisa was in her front yard when I got back, watering her flowers and trying not to look curious about the locksmith's truck in my driveway. Everything okay over there? She called out. Better than okay. Want to help me with something? She turned off her hose and walked over, wearing cut-off jeans and a tank top that made her look about 10 years younger than Julia's carefully maintained 33. What do you need? I need to redecorate. We spent the afternoon taking down Julia's precious artwork and moving her carefully arranged furniture into the garage. Every piece that went into storage felt like reclaiming territory. Lisa had good instincts about what worked and what was just Julia showing off. This place looks like a museum, Lisa said, hefting a ridiculously expensive vase that Julia had bought because some designer told her it was essential. That was the point. Julia wanted everything to look perfect for her Instagram. What did you want? I looked around our living room, now half empty but somehow more welcoming than it had been in years. I wanted it to feel like home. We ordered Chinese food and ate it on the couch, something Julia would have had a stroke over. Lisa was easy to talk to, funny in ways that didn't require an audience, and she actually laughed at my jokes. Can I ask you something? She said, stealing one of my egg rolls. Why did you marry her? It was a fair question. She was exciting, dynamic. She made me feel like I was part of something bigger than myself. And now? Now I realize that something bigger didn't include me. It just required me to pay for it. My phone buzzed with another call from Julia. This time I answered. Ben, finally, what is going on? I've been trying to reach you all day. I've been busy. How's Paris? Don't play games with me. Who is that woman in the photo? That's Lisa, my friend. You remember friends, right? People who actually enjoy spending time with you? This isn't funny, Ben. People are asking questions. What people? Marcus saw the photo. He thinks you're trying to make me look bad. I looked at Lisa, who was trying not to laugh. Julia, you flew to Paris with your ex-boyfriend. I don't need to make you look bad. You're handling that yourself. It's not what you think. This is business. Business? Right. Is that what you call it when you're sharing hotel rooms with your business partners now? There was a long pause. How did you... We're not sharing a room. The photo you sent yesterday shows you in a hotel bathrobe, Julia. Same bathrobe Marcus posted on his Instagram story 2 hours earlier. Either you're staying in the same room, or Parisian hotels have very specific uniform requirements. Another pause. You're being paranoid. I'm being observant. There's a difference. I'll be home Sunday night. We'll talk then. Actually, you won't be home Sunday night. I changed the locks today. You what? I also filed for divorce this morning. You should be getting served tomorrow. Have a great rest of your trip, Julia. Try the wine. I hear it pairs well with adultery. I hung up and turned off the phone. Lisa was staring at me with something that looked like admiration. Damn, Ben. Remind me never to get on your bad side. You're not married to me and cheating with your ex-boyfriend in Paris, so I think you're safe. She laughed, and the sound filled our empty house with something it had been missing for months. Genuine happiness. The next morning, I woke up to find Lisa asleep on my couch, covered with the throw blanket Julia had declared too casual for the living room. We'd stayed up late talking, sharing stories, and laughing until my sides hurt. It had been the best night I'd had in years. I made coffee and checked my phone. 47 new messages from Julia, each one more frantic than the last. She'd been served at her hotel, and apparently Marcus wasn't handling the drama as well as he'd expected. Ben, you have to stop this. Marcus is furious. He says this is going to complicate everything. The lawyers are saying I could lose everything. This is insane. Please call me. We can work this out. It doesn't have to be like this. But it did have to be like this. For the first time in our marriage, I was the one making the rules. And rule number 1 was simple. Actions have consequences. Lisa woke up around 9, stretching and looking embarrassed. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to fall asleep here. Don't apologize. It was nice having company. She looked around the half-empty room, taking in the boxes of Julia's things and the spaces on the walls where her photos used to hang. How are you feeling about all this? Like I should have done it years ago. My phone rang. Not Julia this time, but Tasha Williams, Julia's best friend and chief enabler. Ben? What the hell is going on? Julia called me crying, saying you filed for divorce while she's on a business trip. Business trip. Is that what she's calling it? She's in Paris working on a major deal. You're being completely unreasonable. Tasha, she's sharing a hotel room with her ex-boyfriend. The same ex-boyfriend she told me she hadn't spoken to in years. If that's business, then I'm the Queen of England. You don't understand. This could be huge for her career. Her career? Right. What about her marriage? Marriage is about supporting each other's dreams, Ben. I looked at Lisa, who was listening to this conversation with growing amazement. You're right, Tasha. Marriage is about support. So tell me, when's the last time Julia supported one of my dreams? When's the last time she asked about my work, my goals, anything that didn't directly benefit her? Silence. That's what I thought. Enjoy defending the indefensible, Tasha. Just remember that when this all comes out, and it will come out, you were the one making excuses for her. I hung up and realized that Lisa was looking at me with something close to awe. You're really doing this, she said. I'm really doing this. Good. She doesn't deserve you. That afternoon, while Julia was presumably crying into her champagne somewhere in the City of Light, I was sitting in my backyard with Lisa, planning the next phase of my liberation. The war was just getting started, and I intended to win it. By Thursday morning, the gossip network in Preston Hollow was running at full capacity. Julia's dramatic phone calls to her friends had backfired spectacularly, creating exactly the kind of attention she usually craved, but definitely didn't want right now. I was learning that there's a big difference between being the wronged party and being the party everyone thought was wronged. The sympathy was overwhelming, and it was giving me ideas. Ben, Priya Patel cornered me at the mailbox, practically vibrating with curiosity. I heard about Julia's trip. Are you doing okay? Priya was the neighborhood's unofficial information exchange, a sweet woman who collected gossip like a hobby. She was also one of Julia's closest friends, which made this conversation particularly interesting. I'm managing, thanks. It's been an adjustment. I just can't believe she'd leave for Paris without discussing it with you first. That seems so unlike her. I gave her my best wounded husband expression. Well, she did discuss it, just not with me. What do you mean? She discussed it plenty with Marcus. They had a lot of planning to do. Priya's eyes widened. Marcus? Her ex-boyfriend Marcus? The very same. Apparently he's her business partner now. Funny how she forgot to mention that part when she was telling everyone about her big opportunity. I could practically see the wheels turning in Priya's head. By noon, half the neighborhood would know that Julia was in Paris with her ex-boyfriend. By evening, the story would have evolved into something even more scandalous. The beauty of gossip is that it grows in the telling. I didn't need to lie or exaggerate. I just needed to plant seeds and let human nature do the rest. Lisa found me in my backyard that afternoon, setting up the outdoor furniture that Julia had banned because it was too casual for entertaining. You look pleased with yourself, she observed. I ran into Priya this morning. Ah, the neighborhood news network. What did you tell her? Just the truth. Julia's in Paris with Marcus. They've been planning this trip together, and she didn't think it was worth mentioning to her husband that her business partner used to be her boyfriend. Lisa sat down in one of the newly arranged chairs. You're evil. I like it. I'm not evil. I'm strategic. There's a difference. What's your next move? I pulled out my phone and showed her the text I'd received an hour earlier. It was from Abby Morrison, Julia's friend, who'd never seemed to actually like her very much. Ben, I hope you're doing okay. If you need someone to talk to, I'm here. Some of us have been wondering about Julia's behavior lately. Interesting, Lisa said, reading over my shoulder. Sounds like Julia's support network isn't as solid as she thought. That's what I'm hoping. I called Abby back that evening. She answered on the first ring. Ben, I'm so glad you called. How are you holding up? It's been rough, honestly. Finding out your wife has been lying to you about her relationship with her ex-boyfriend isn't exactly easy. I was afraid of that. Ben, can I tell you something in confidence? Of course. Julia's been acting strange for months. Secretive phone calls, mysterious meetings, new clothes she claimed were for work but seemed way too personal. Some of us were starting to wonder if there was someone else. This was better than I'd hoped. Really? Priya mentioned seeing Julia at lunch with a man a few weeks ago. Very cozy, very intimate. When Priya asked about it later, Julia got defensive and changed the subject. Did she describe the man? Tall, dark hair, expensive clothes, European accent. Sound familiar? Marcus. He'd been in Dallas, and Julia had lied about that too. Very familiar. Abby, can I ask you something? Why are you telling me this? There was a pause. Because you're a good man, Ben. You deserve better than what she's been giving you. And honestly, some of us are tired of pretending Julia's behavior is okay just because she's our friend. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen, our kitchen, but it felt more like mine every day, and realized that Julia had made a crucial miscalculation. She'd assumed that her friends would automatically take her side, that her version of events would be accepted without question. She'd forgotten that people aren't stupid. They'd been watching, noticing, drawing their own conclusions. All I had to do was give them permission to say what they were already thinking. Friday morning brought the call I'd been expecting. Julia, served with divorce papers in Paris, was not taking it well. Ben, this is insane. You can't just end our marriage because you're having some kind of midlife crisis. Midlife crisis? Julia, I'm 34, and I'm not ending our marriage. You ended it when you flew to Paris with your ex-boyfriend. He's not my ex-boyfriend. He's a business contact. A business contact you used to sleep with. A business contact you've been secretly meeting with for weeks. A business contact you're currently sharing a hotel room with in the most romantic city in the world. If this is business, then I'm a professional astronaut. The hotel thing is just for convenience. Separate beds. I almost laughed. Julia, Marcus posted a photo on Instagram last night. You're in it, wearing his shirt, in what is very clearly a hotel room with one bed. Either you're the world's worst business traveler or you're lying to me, again. Silence. I want to come home. We need to talk about this face to face. You can come back anytime you want. Dallas is a free city, but you're not coming home because this isn't your home anymore. I changed the locks, remember? You can't keep me out of my own house. Actually, I can. It's called abandonment, Julia. You left the state with your lover. That has legal consequences. I'll call the police. Go ahead. Bring the Instagram photos. I'm sure they'll be very interested in your definition of a business trip. I hung up and immediately called Rick. She's panicking, I told him, threatening to call the police, talking about coming home early. Let her come. The longer she stays in Paris with Loverboy, the better it looks for us. But if she comes back, we need to be ready. Ready how? How do you feel about throwing a party? That afternoon, Lisa helped me plan what we decided to call a moving forward barbecue. Nothing too dramatic, just a casual neighborhood get-together to celebrate new beginnings. You're really going all out, Lisa observed, watching me type up invitations on my laptop. Julia always said I didn't know how to entertain properly, time to prove her wrong. The invitations went out Saturday morning to 30 neighbors, including all of Julia's friends. The message was simple. Join me for a barbecue this Sunday as I start the next chapter of my life. Food, drinks, and good company. Come as you are. By Saturday afternoon, I had 23 RSVPs, including one from Abby that made me smile. Wouldn't miss it. I'll bring dessert and moral support. Julia called that night, her voice tight with panic. What is this about a party? Tasha said you're throwing some kind of celebration? Just a barbecue. Neighbors, friends, good food. You know, the kind of thing married couples usually do together. You're doing this to humiliate me. Julia, you humiliated yourself. I'm just refusing to be humiliated with you. Please, Ben, don't do this. Come to Paris. We can work this out. Why would I come to Paris? So I can watch you and Marcus pretend this is all innocent? So I can play the fool while you two laugh about how gullible your husband is? It's not like that. Then what is it like? Explain it to me. Make me understand how a married woman ends up in Paris with her ex-boyfriend, lying to her husband, posting romantic photos, and calling it business. Silence. That's what I thought. Enjoy Paris, Julia. I hear it's beautiful this time of year. Perfect for new beginnings. Sunday afternoon, my backyard filled with neighbors, friends, and the most interesting guest of all, the truth. As people ate burgers and drank beer, the conversation naturally turned to Julia's absence. So where is Julia exactly? Asked Tom Henderson from across the street. Paris, I said simply. Business trip with an old friend. Must be some business, commented Sarah Kim, Julia's yoga instructor. She seemed pretty excited about it. New clothes, new luggage, the works. Abby appeared at my elbow. Ben, can I borrow you for a minute? We walked to a quiet corner of the yard, where she pulled out her phone. I thought you should see this before anyone else does. The screen showed Julia's Instagram story from that morning. She and Marcus at the Louvre, holding hands. The caption read, Sometimes the best business partnerships are built on strong personal foundations. Paris magic, Wirtschus new beginnings. I stared at the photo for a long moment, then started laughing. Actually laughing, deep belly laughs that made Abby look concerned. Ben, are you okay? She just handed me everything I need for the divorce. She's literally documenting her adultery and posting it online. She's not very bright, is she? No, Abby, she's really not. I walked back to the party with a lightness in my step that I hadn't felt in years. Julia had just made my lawyer's job incredibly easy. The party was a success. People stayed late, the conversation was good, and for the first time in months, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. As the evening wound down and guests started to leave, Priya pulled me aside. Ben, I owe you an apology. Some of us knew something wasn't right, but we didn't want to get involved. We should have said something sooner. You don't owe me anything, Priya. Julia made her choices. Now she gets to live with them. What happens next? I looked around my backyard, at Lisa helping me clean up, at the neighbors who'd become friends, at the life I was building without Julia's permission or approval. Next, I get my life back. As the last guest left, Lisa and I sat on the porch, sharing a beer and watching the sunset. "Good party," she said. "Great party, and it's just the beginning." My phone buzzed with a text from Julia. Another photo from Paris, this one of her and Marcus at dinner, looking like the perfect couple. I showed it to Lisa, who shook her head in amazement. Does she not realize what she's doing? She thinks she's making me jealous. She has no idea she's building my case for me? I typed back a simple response. "You two look perfect together. I hope you're very happy." And for the first time in months, I actually meant it. Julia had found what she was looking for, and so had I. The difference was, I'd found it without destroying anyone else's life in the process. The war was far from over, but I was winning. And the best part? Julia was helping me do it. Monday morning brought news that changed everything. Rick called while I was having coffee with Lisa, who had started spending most of her time at my house. Not because we were romantic, though the possibility hung in the air like a question neither of us was ready to ask, but because we genuinely enjoyed each other's company. "Ben, you need to see this," Rick said without preamble. "Can you come in this morning?" "What's going on?" "Your wife just made the biggest mistake of her life. I'll explain when you get here." An hour later, I was sitting in Rick's office, staring at a stack of printouts that represented Julia's complete social media activity from the past week. "She's been documenting everything," Rick said, barely containing his glee. "Every romantic dinner, every tourist attraction, every moment of what she's calling her business trip. Look at this one." The photo showed Julia and Marcus kissing on a bridge over the Seine. The caption read, "Sometimes business becomes pleasure." Paris love. Jiao, follow your heart. New chapter. She posted this to her public Instagram account, Rick continued. The same account where she identifies herself as married to you. She's literally advertising her adultery to everyone she knows. I flipped through the other photos. Julia and Marcus holding hands at the Eiffel Tower, sharing champagne in their hotel room, looking at each other with the kind of intimacy that had nothing to do with business and everything to do with betrayal. "This is better than I hoped," I admitted. "It gets better. I had my investigator do some digging on Marcus Beaumont. Turns out he's not quite the successful entrepreneur Julia thinks he is." Rick slid another folder across the desk. "Marcus has been married 3 times. All 3 marriages ended when he was caught cheating. He's currently in debt up to his eyeballs. His last business venture collapsed 6 months ago. And he's been living off the generosity of wealthy women who think he's going to make them rich." The pieces clicked into place. He's a con man. A very charming con man with expensive tastes and no money to pay for them. Your wife isn't his business partner, Ben. She's his latest mark. I thought about Julia's excitement over the past few months, her talk of expanding globally, her certainty that this trip would change everything. She wasn't lying about that last part. Does she know? I doubt it. Men like Marcus are very good at what they do. They make women feel special, chosen, part of something exclusive. By the time the truth comes out, it's usually too late. "What do you mean, too late?" Rick's expression grew serious. "I pulled Julia's credit report this morning. She's opened 3 new credit cards in the past 2 months. All maxed out. Total debt, $87,000. The room seemed to spin. $87,000? What did she spend it on? Based on the charges, I'd say she's been funding Marcus's lifestyle. Expensive restaurants, luxury hotels, designer clothes, first-class flights. She's been playing sugar mama to a professional grifter." I sat back in my chair, trying to process this information. Julia wasn't just cheating on me, she was destroying our financial future to do it. "The good news," Rick continued, "is that this debt is in her name only. You're not responsible for it. The bad news is that she's probably going to try to use marital assets to pay it off when she realizes what's happened." "Can she do that?" "Not if we move fast. I'm filing an emergency motion to freeze all marital assets pending the divorce proceedings. She won't be able to touch the house, the joint accounts, or anything else without court approval." I signed the paperwork in a daze. In 1 week, Julia had gone from unfaithful wife to financial disaster. The woman who used to lecture me about being more ambitious had gambled away our future on a man who specialized in destroying marriages. "There's one more thing," Rick said as I prepared to leave. "Marcus isn't in Paris on business either. He's there because he's avoiding creditors in Dallas. 3 different companies are looking for him, including one that's filed criminal charges for fraud." "Julia's in Paris with a fugitive?" "Technically, he's not a fugitive yet, but he will be if he comes back to Texas." I drove home in a fog, trying to figure out how to process this information. Part of me felt vindicated. I'd been right to be suspicious, but another part of me felt something unexpected. Pity. Julia had been so desperate to escape our life that she'd walked straight into a trap. Lisa was waiting for me when I got home, and one look at my face told her everything she needed to know. Bad news or worse news? She asked. Catastrophic news. Julia's been funding a con man with credit cards. We're talking about nearly $90,000 in debt. Lisa's eyes widened. Jesus, Ben, what are you going to do? Protect what's left. Rick's filing emergency motions to freeze everything. Julia's going to come home to a very different reality than the one she left. That afternoon, as if summoned by the universe's sense of irony, Julia called. Ben, we need to talk. Her voice sounded different, smaller, less certain. I'm listening. I think I've made some mistakes. Some mistakes? Julia, you've been posting photos of yourself cheating on your husband for the entire internet to see. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. It's not what it looks like. It looks like you're having an affair with a con man who's been using you to pay his bills. How close am I? Silence. Oh, good. You're starting to figure it out. What gave it away? Did he ask you for money directly, or has he been letting you pay for everything while he talks about future investments? How did you? Never mind. Ben, I need to come home. We need to talk about this in person. You can come home anytime you want, but you should know that I've frozen all our joint accounts. And I've seen your credit reports, Julia. $87,000? Really? I heard her sharp intake of breath. You had no right to? I had every right. I'm your husband, remember? The guy you promised to love, honor, and not financially destroy with your midlife crisis. I can explain everything. I'm sure you can. You always were good at explaining why your disasters were actually everyone else's fault. That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been discussing your concerns about our marriage before running off to Paris with your ex-boyfriend. Fair would have been not maxing out credit cards to fund your affair. Fair would have been remembering that you have a husband before you started posting romantic photos with another man. I know I screwed up, but we can fix this. We can work through it. I looked around the house that finally felt like home, at Lisa, who was pretending not to listen while making dinner in my kitchen, at the life I'd started building without Julia's permission. No, we can't. Julia, you didn't screw up. You made a series of deliberate choices, each one designed to prioritize your wants over our marriage. You chose Marcus over me, Paris over Dallas, excitement over stability. You chose to lie, to cheat, to steal from our future to pay for your fantasy. I never stole anything. You spent $90,000 of money we don't have on a man who isn't your husband. What would you call that? An investment in our future. Whose future? Because it sure as hell wasn't mine. There was a long pause. When Julia spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. I'm scared, Ben. I think Marcus might not be who he said he was. Marcus is exactly who he said he was. You just weren't listening. He told you he was charming, successful, and interested in you. He never said he was honest, solvent, or available. What am I supposed to do? You're supposed to come home, face the consequences of your choices, and figure out how to pay back the money you borrowed to fund your affair. What you're not supposed to do is expect me to fix it for you. I can't do this alone. You should have thought of that before you decided you didn't want to be married anymore. I hung up and turned to find Lisa watching me with an expression I couldn't read. That was harsh, she said. It was honest. Are you okay? I considered the question. Was I okay? My wife had cheated on me, lied to me, and nearly bankrupted us. She was stranded in Paris with a con man who would probably disappear the moment he realized the money was gone. Our marriage was over, our finances were a mess, and everyone we knew was talking about our private business. But I was sitting in my own house, having dinner with someone who actually enjoyed my company, free from the constant criticism and manipulation that had defined my life for the past 3 years. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt like myself. Yeah, I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. I think I am. The next morning brought a text from Julia that was equal parts desperate and delusional. Marcus had to leave suddenly for a business emergency. I'm coming home tonight. We'll fix this together. I showed the message to Lisa over breakfast. Business emergency, she said. Let me guess. His business emergency involves staying one step ahead of the law. Probably. The question is, what do I do when she gets here? What do you want to do? It was the same question Lisa had asked me a week ago, and the answer was clearer now than it had been then. I want to be done. Completely, finally, permanently done. Then be done. That evening, I sat on my front porch with a beer, watching for the taxi that would bring Julia home to a life that no longer included her. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt or confused or desperate for answers. I was free. And that, I realized, was worth more than all the money she'd spent trying to escape me. Julia's taxi pulled up at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, and I watched from my living room window as she struggled with her luggage on the sidewalk. She looked smaller than I remembered, less polished. Her hair was messy, her clothes wrinkled, and she moved with the uncertain steps of someone whose world had just collapsed. She tried her key first, jiggling it in the lock for a full minute before remembering that I'd changed them. Then she knocked, softly at first, then with increasing desperation. Ben? Ben, I know you're in there. Please open the door. I took my time getting up, straightening my shirt, finishing my beer. When I finally opened the door, Julia looked like she'd been crying for hours. Hi, she said, as if she'd just come back from the grocery store instead of a week-long affair in Paris. Hi yourself. How was your business trip? She flinched. Can I come in? We need to talk. We can talk here. Ben, please, I'm exhausted. It's been a very long day. I imagine it has. Finding out your boyfriend is a criminal tends to complicate travel plans. Her face crumpled. You know about Marcus. I know everything about Marcus. The question is, what do you know? She looked around the neighborhood, suddenly aware that we were having this conversation on the front porch where anyone could hear. He's gone, she whispered. He left me in Paris with no explanation, just a note saying he had to handle some business back home. What kind of note? She pulled a crumpled piece of hotel stationery from her purse. I read it under the porch light. Julia, something urgent has come up that requires my immediate attention in Dallas. I'll be in touch soon to discuss our next steps. Thank you for everything, Im. Thank you for everything, I repeated. Classy. Nothing says I love you like a form letter. It's not funny, Ben. You're right. It's not funny. It's predictable. Marcus got what he wanted from you, and now he's moved on to his next mark. The only surprising thing is that you're surprised. I thought he cared about me. He did care about you. He cared about your credit cards, your willingness to pay for expensive dinners, and your complete inability to see him for what he was. Julia's shoulders started shaking. I've made such a mess of everything. Yes, you have. The question is, what are you going to do about it? I want to come home. I want to fix this. I looked at her standing on my porch, not our porch, not anymore, but my porch, and felt something I hadn't expected. Nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no desire for revenge. Just a quiet certainty that this chapter of my life was over. Julia, you can't come home because this isn't your home anymore, and you can't fix this because some things aren't fixable. Please, Ben, I know I screwed up, but we can work through this. Marriage is about forgiveness, right? Marriage is about a lot of things. Trust, respect, partnership, honesty. You threw all of that away for a week in Paris with a con man. I was confused. I felt trapped. I thought there might be something better out there. And did you find it? She looked down at her feet. No. Then you learned something valuable. Unfortunately, you learned it at the expense of our marriage, our finances, and any chance we had of building a life together. What about counseling? What about trying to rebuild? I thought about the past week. The relief I'd felt when she was gone. The ease of living without constant criticism. The simple pleasure of being with someone who actually liked me. Julia, do you know what I've been doing while you were in Paris, finding yourself? She shook her head. I've been remembering who I am when I'm not being told I'm not good enough. I've been enjoying my own house, my own friends, my own life. For the first time in 3 years, I've been happy. I made you happy once. You made me feel needed. There's a difference. She was crying openly now, and I felt a flicker of the old impulse to comfort her, to fix her problems, to make everything okay. But that impulse was weaker now, overwhelmed by the knowledge that making everything okay for Julia had meant making everything wrong for me. Where am I supposed to go? I don't know. That's not my problem anymore. Ben, please, I have nowhere else to go. You have friends, you have family, you have credit cards, apparently. The credit cards are maxed out. I spent everything on Marcus. I know, I've seen the statements. You can't just throw me out on the street. I'm not throwing you out. You left. I'm just not letting you back in. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her cycling through the emotions I'd watched her use to get her way for 3 years. Anger, hurt, manipulation, desperation. This is about that woman, isn't it? Your neighbor. This is about you flying to Paris with your ex-boyfriend and spending $90,000 on your affair. But you're sleeping with her. What I'm doing with Lisa is none of your business. You gave up the right to have opinions about my personal life when you posted photos of yourself kissing another man. So, you are sleeping with her." I looked at Julia, really looked at her, and realized that even now, even after everything she'd done, she was trying to make this about my behavior instead of hers. "Good night, Julia. I suggest you call Tasha. I'm sure she'll let you crash on her couch while you figure out how to pay back all that money you borrowed." I started to close the door, but she put her hand against it. "Ben, wait. What about the divorce? Can't we at least talk about terms?" "Talk to my lawyer, Rick Vasquez. He'll explain how adultery and abandonment work in Texas. I can't afford a lawyer." "Then you should have thought of that before you decided to destroy our marriage." I closed the door and turned the deadbolt, then stood in my entryway listening to Julia cry on the porch. After a few minutes, I heard her footsteps on the sidewalk, then the sound of her dragging her luggage down the street. Lisa appeared at the top of the stairs in pajamas and a robe. "Is she gone?" "She's gone." "How do you feel?" I considered the question. Relieved, sad, free. That's a lot of emotions for one night. "It's been a long time coming." Lisa came downstairs and put her arms around me. Not romantically, just human comfort from someone who cared about my well-being. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now I get divorced, figure out how to deal with her debt, and start over." "Sounds like a plan." "Lisa." "Yeah? Thank you, for everything. I couldn't have done this without you." "Yes, you could have, but I'm glad you didn't have to." The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from Julia and 43 text messages that ranged from apologetic to angry to desperate. I deleted them all without reading them and called Rick. "She's back," I told him. "How did it go?" "Better than expected. She's finally starting to understand that actions have consequences." "Good. I've got news on the asset freeze. It's been approved. She can't touch anything without court permission." "What about her debt?" "That's her problem. Texas is a community property state, but debt incurred for the benefit of an extramarital affair isn't considered marital debt. She borrowed that money to cheat on you, Ben. She gets to pay it back herself." "And the house?" "Yours. She abandoned the marital residence to conduct an affair. No judge in Texas is going to give her half of a house she walked away from to sleep with her ex-boyfriend." I hung up feeling lighter than I had in years. Julia had gambled everything on Marcus and lost. Now she got to live with the consequences while I got to live with the freedom. That afternoon, Abby called with an update on the neighborhood gossip network. "Julia's staying with Tasha," she reported. "Word is that she's broke, her boyfriend disappeared, and she's trying to figure out how to pay off massive credit card debt." "How's the sympathy level?" "Non-existent. Priya saw the Instagram photos before Julia took them down. Everyone knows exactly what kind of business trip she was on." "And Tasha?" "Even Tasha is getting tired of making excuses for her. Apparently Julia's been calling Marcus nonstop, and he's not answering. She's starting to realize that he used her and moved on." That evening, Lisa and I were having dinner on the patio when my phone rang. Julia again. "Want me to answer it?" Lisa offered. "No, I've got this." Ben, please, I need to talk to you." "We talked last night. I thought I was pretty clear." "I've been thinking about what you said, and you're right. I made terrible choices, but I want to make it right." "How exactly do you plan to make it right?" "I'll pay back every penny. I'll get a job, work extra hours, whatever it takes." "Julia, you owe $90,000. At your current income level, that's going to take you about 15 years to pay off, assuming you can find work after word gets out about why your marriage ended." "What do you mean?" "I mean that Preston Hollow is a small community, and everyone knows everyone. Your reputation as a cheating wife who destroyed her marriage for a con man isn't exactly going to help your interior design business." "You wouldn't?" "I wouldn't what? Tell people the truth? Julia, you posted the truth on Instagram. I don't need to tell anyone anything." There was a long pause. "I'm scared, Ben. I don't know what I'm going to do." "You're going to learn to live with the consequences of your choices, just like everyone else does. I love you. I know I have a terrible way of showing it, but I do love you." I looked at Lisa, who was pretending not to listen while she cleared the dinner dishes. Lisa, who laughed at my jokes and enjoyed my company and never made me feel like I needed to apologize for existing. "No, Julia. You love the idea of me. You love having someone to pay the bills and provide stability while you chase your dreams, but you don't love me. If you loved me, you wouldn't have been able to do what you did." "That's not true." "It is true, and deep down, you know it. You just don't want to admit it because that would mean taking responsibility for destroying something good. Please, Ben, give me another chance." "I gave you a chance. I gave you 3 years of chances. You used them all up in Paris. I hung up and turned off my phone. Lisa sat down beside me, close enough that I could smell her perfume. You okay? She asked. I'm perfect. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I actually was. 3 weeks later, Julia made her last desperate play. I should have seen it coming, but I'd underestimated how far she was willing to go to avoid facing reality. It started with a call from Rick on a Friday morning. Ben, we have a problem. Julia's hired a lawyer. Good for her. She needs one. Not just any lawyer. She hired Patricia Wolf. I knew the name. Patricia Wolf was Dallas's most notorious divorce attorney, the woman who specialized in destroying men in high-profile cases. She was expensive, ruthless, and very good at what she did. How can Julia afford Patricia Wolf? That's what I want to know. Wolf doesn't work for free, and your wife is supposedly broke. What's her angle? They're claiming that you've been financially abusive, that you isolated Julia from her friends, and that her trip to Paris was actually an attempt to escape a controlling marriage. They're also claiming that your relationship with Lisa started before Julia left for Paris. I felt my blood pressure spike. That's complete bullshit. I know it's bullshit. You know it's bullshit. But bullshit can be effective if it's packaged well. Wolf is very good at packaging bullshit. What do they want? Half of everything, plus alimony, plus you to pay off her credit card debt as part of the settlement. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. She destroys our marriage, spends $90,000 on her affair, and now she wants me to pay her for the privilege? That's about the size of it. Ben, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Is there any truth to the claim that you and Lisa were involved before Julia left? None. Lisa and I didn't even have a real conversation until after Julia was already in Paris. Good, because if there was any truth to it, it would complicate things significantly. That afternoon, I got a call from an unexpected source, Marcus Beaumont himself. Ben Carter, this is Marcus. I think we need to talk. I think you need to go screw yourself. Wait, don't hang up. This is about Julia. She's been calling me nonstop, and she's saying some things that I think you should know about. Against my better judgment, I stayed on the line. I'm listening. She's telling people that you were abusive, that she left because she was afraid of you, that her trip to Paris was about escaping a dangerous situation. And you're calling to tell me this why? Sudden attack of conscience? I'm calling because it's not true, and I don't want to be part of whatever game she's playing now. What do you mean, it's not true? Julia talked about you constantly when we were together, not like someone who was afraid or being abused. She talked about you like you were boring, safe, predictable. She said you never fought back, never stood up for yourself, never made her feel like she had to be careful around you. This was surreal. My wife's lover was calling to defend my character. Why are you telling me this? Because Julia's threatening to drag me into her divorce case. She wants me to testify that she came to Paris to escape you, that our relationship was just her seeking comfort from a friend. She's promising to make it worth my while if I play along. And you're not interested? I'm interested in staying out of Texas courts. I have my own legal issues to deal with right now. I heard about that. Something about fraud charges? Nothing I can't handle, but I can't handle them from a jail cell, which is where I'll end up if I commit perjury in your divorce case. So what are you proposing? I'm proposing to tell the truth. Julia pursued me, not the other way around. She paid for everything. She initiated the physical relationship, and she never once mentioned being afraid of you. She mentioned being bored by you, frustrated with you, ready to move on from you, but never afraid. In exchange for what? In exchange for nothing. I'm done with Julia, Ben. She's more trouble than she's worth, and she's starting to scare me with how far she's willing to go to get what she wants. After I hung up, I called Rick and told him about the conversation. Interesting, Rick said. Very interesting. If Marcus is willing to testify to that, it destroys Julia's entire case. Can we trust him? We can trust him to act in his own self-interest, and right now, his self-interest involves staying out of a perjury charge. That weekend, Lisa and I decided to take a trip to Austin. We needed to get away from the drama, and I wanted to think clearly about what came next. We drove down Saturday morning, checked into a hotel on Lady Bird Lake, and spent the day walking around downtown like a normal couple doing normal things. Can I ask you something? Lisa said as we sat by the lake that evening. Anything. What happens when this is all over? With us, I mean. It was the question I'd been avoiding, the conversation we'd been dancing around for weeks. Lisa and I had become something more than friends, but we'd been so focused on dealing with Julia that we hadn't really talked about what we were to each other. What do you want to happen? I want to see where this goes. I want to find out what we could be when we're not defined by your divorce. Even knowing that I come with a lot of baggage, an ex-wife who's trying to destroy me, financial complications, a neighborhood full of people who know all our business. Ben, everyone has baggage. The question is whether it's worth carrying. I looked at her sitting beside me in the fading light and realized that somewhere in the middle of the worst period of my life, I'd found something I hadn't even known I was looking for. It's worth carrying, I said. She smiled and kissed me, and for a moment, everything else faded away. Julia, the divorce, the legal battles, the gossip. None of it mattered. What mattered was this: the possibility of building something real with someone who actually wanted to build it with me. We drove back to Dallas Sunday evening, refreshed and ready to face whatever came next. What came next was a surprise. Julia was waiting on my front porch. "We need to talk," she said as I got out of the car. "No, we don't. We need to communicate through our lawyers. Ben, please, 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." Lisa squeezed my hand. "I'll be inside." I waited until Lisa was safely in the house before turning back to Julia. She looked terrible, thin, pale, exhausted. The polished exterior that had always been so important to her was completely gone. 5 minutes, I said. "I want to drop the lawsuit." "What?" "I want to drop the lawsuit, accept whatever settlement you're willing to offer, and move on with my life." I studied her face, looking for the angle, the manipulation, the hidden agenda. Why? Because Patricia Wolfe is expensive, and I can't afford her. Because Marcus won't lie for me in court. Because everyone knows the truth anyway, and pretending otherwise is just making everything worse. What do you want from me? I want you to let me keep my car and my personal belongings. I want you not to go after me for the credit card debt. And I want you to not drag this out in court where everyone can watch me get destroyed. It was a reasonable offer. More than reasonable, actually. Julia was offering to walk away from our marriage with almost nothing in exchange for a quick, quiet divorce. What's the catch? There's no catch. I'm tired, Ben. I'm tired of fighting, tired of pretending, tired of trying to make this into something it's not. I screwed up. I know I screwed up. I just want it to be over. And the abuse allegations? I'll withdraw them. I'll sign whatever papers your lawyer wants saying that you never abused me, that I made it up because I was desperate. I looked at this woman I'd been married to for 3 years, this person who had shared my bed and my life and my dreams and felt nothing but pity. She'd gambled everything on a fantasy and lost it all. "Okay," I said. "Okay? Okay. I'll have Rick draw up papers. You keep your car and your personal stuff. I won't pursue you for the debt. But Julia? Yeah? This is it. Once we sign those papers, we're done. No more phone calls, no more showing up at my house, no more attempts to change the terms. You make a clean break and you stay gone." I understand. Good. Because if you violate this agreement, if you try to cause problems for me or Lisa or anyone else in my life, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person you really are. She nodded and walked away, and I knew I'd never see her again. Not really. We might run into each other at the grocery store or a restaurant, but the Julia who had been my wife was gone. In her place was just a stranger who'd learned some hard lessons about the cost of betrayal. 2 weeks later, I signed the final divorce papers in Rick's office. Julia wasn't there. She'd signed her copies the day before and had them delivered by messenger. "How do you feel?" Rick asked as I handed back the pen. "Free," I said. Finally, completely free. That evening, Lisa and I had dinner at the same restaurant where we'd taken our first revenge selfie a month earlier. But this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about celebration. "So what now?" Lisa asked, raising her wine glass. Now we find out what happens next. "Any ideas?" I looked around the restaurant, at the other couples enjoying their evening, at the life that was happening all around us. Normal life, the kind of life I'd forgotten was possible. "I have some ideas," I said, "but I want to take it slow. I want to do this right. I'd like that." We clinked glasses, and I realized that for the first time in years, I was exactly where I wanted to be, with exactly the person I wanted to be with, living exactly the life I wanted to live. Julia had been right about one thing. Sometimes you have to follow your heart to find what you're really looking for. She'd just been wrong about where her heart was leading her. Mine had led me home. 6 months later, Lisa moved in officially. A year later, I proposed. 2 years later, we got married in my backyard, surrounded by friends and neighbors who had watched our love story unfold in the aftermath of my divorce. Julia never came back to Dallas. I heard through the neighborhood gossip network that she'd moved to Phoenix, where she was working as a sales associate at a furniture store and slowly paying off her debt. Marcus had disappeared entirely, probably running his con game on some other unsuspecting woman in some other city. I never felt sorry for either of them. They'd made their choices, and they'd gotten exactly what they deserved. Julia had wanted excitement and passion and a life bigger than the one we'd built together. She'd gotten all of that, along with the debt, loneliness, and consequences that came with it. As for me, I'd gotten something better than revenge. I'd gotten my life back. And I'd learned that sometimes the best way to win a war is to stop fighting it and start building something better instead.